good evening. This is Stan Deyo, your host, as usual. This is Thursday night, 31st of July, 2025. I'm going to be sharing a few thoughts with you about my history and various things I've been involved in because a lot of you have sent me emails and requests for more info about me personally. And I suppose that's a fair request. So I'm going to start by looking at some things here just at random, and I'll share them with you on the screen here. All right, I've picked up a picture here of an article from 1977 in Australia, and you can see here I've outlined various things. It was about the FBI using confidential informants as spies, in essence, in industry. At the time of this writing of this article, I think there were um, over 700 of us. I think it was more than that now. It's about 15,000 that have been used by the FBI. So it's an honorable position. They cleared me for top secret security in my particular case because I was working on an international case with them. In fact, a couple of cases, one domestic and one international. Now, um, we're not trained agents, but we are, special people in special places that the FBI uses to get information, and that's just the way they work. Some of us are paid, others, like myself, I just had a exchange of information on the Illuminati, which was Director Hoover's favorite at the time. And so I asked questions about them, and they knew, and they released what they could to me. So it was my payment was information. Not a very profitable thing in money, but it was helping me to investigate the deep state, in essence. I looked on the internet to a place called The Intercept, as you can see here, theintercept.com. It's up at the top of the page here. It's a report on the FBI, how it recruits and handles its army of informants, it says, and that's confidential informants. They call them confidential human source, CHSs. Anyway, this is from a 2015 report, and I encourage you to go and look this up to see what they were allowed to do with us, what we were allowed to do for them, et cetera, et cetera. The Intercept Confidential Human Source Policy Guide, dated January 31st, 2017. It's an interesting read. Now, at the time in 1970, when I was working for the FBI, this was my, my mugshot here. This was me at that time. Um, and I like to identify with a couple of people in the movies, James Bond and who was Star Trek captain of the Enterprise there, James T. Kirk. James T. Kirk. Anyway, you can see by the sideburns, it was pointy sideburns, and then the formal look here was more the James Bond scenario. It was about this time in the late 60s, 68, I think it was, through about 69, 70. I formed a hobby business while I was doing other things in computing and working for the FBI. And I had a partner in that, Charlie Stewart. And we decided to use our cameras and go interview lovely ladies and make composites for the portfolios for them to present themselves to industry. And we had a business card made up here. I'll just see if I can pull that into the thing here, and we'll add this in. All right, let me get over there and bring this up. Okay, well, as you can see here, we were in Dallas at the time and thought we'd fancy it up with a French name. It's not exactly how I spelled my name originally. It was D apostrophe IOUX. But anyway, we fancied it up and put this standard picture you could put on your business card at the time. And that was us, playing photographer, a bit like, Bob Cummings in 1955 or so. He had a TV show, actually. And here are some of the photos of the ladies that we filmed during time. It was a really good opportunity for Charlie and I to meet, beautiful women and to earn $1 at the same time. Um, Now, this was his show, which let's see if we can zoom that up here a bit for you. Bob Cummings show. He played a ex-Air Force officer who set up a photo studio business, and photographed the lovely ladies. And this is kind of the promo that they used for that. Now, some of the ladies that we shot composites for were very elegant. A lady like this one here, Dee Elkins. She was the wife of a deputy sheriff for the city of Dallas, or actually the county of Dallas. Let me see if I can find her here. There she is. Yeah, that's Dee. And she taught Charlie and I the ins and outs of what composites should look like, portfolios for the ladies. And I bought a new camera, 67 Mamiya Flex twin lens reflex to get really high resolution images. This is Dee, and here's her again. And actually, she posed with a few of the boys down on Turtle Creek in North Dallas. It was kind of interesting because you can see here she's barefoot, but she's wearing stockings and chewing on a piece of straw there. But yeah, then we had several other ladies come up and ask us to do their portfolios. As you can see, this is the time, the fashion then. This is one of our very formal, highfalutin type models, Marcia Mann. And again, this is just some of the ladies here. This lady here we call Sophia. I forget her real name, but she was a teenager, but she looked so much like Sophia Loren that we used her in a number of our own promotions in addition to a portfolio for her. This was the daughter of a friend of mine down in Australia after I went down there. This was taken back, after I got down there in 1972. And I continued to do some photography down there, even though it wasn't with a partnership with Charlie, because he wasn't going to be in Australia. As you can see, these are some of the ladies. Uh, this lady here, Wendy, we took her photo on the lawn of the home that the Duke of Edinburgh stayed in when he was there, or King Charles. He was Bonnie Prince Charles at the time. He was out in the country, and they let us use the grounds for backdrop. This lady actually was a lady we found witnessing on the streets, a Christian witness to people that were just walking down the streets and stuff. She was quite an interesting person. Okay, that's photography. Now, during this time, in the late 60s and in 1970, um, I started drawing, painting. I taught myself how to paint oil paintings, oil pictures, and did pencil sketches. I'll just show you a few of those at the time here. Let's see, we need to share this screen, and here we go. Okay. Um, Here, were some pencil sketches of ladies and children. This one was made after I read the Lord of the Rings, and this was the Elven Princess in my mind. Here was my first oil painting, I think, and then I used chalks to do this copy of a picture in Playboy, and this was a 2 foot by 3 foot oil painting in blue, an imaginary Neptune lady, whatever, nothing fancy or anything. And then I did sketches of various devices that I was going to make or did make, and like this shark boat here that was an entrainment propulsion device, and the Adamski UFO. Interesting things, but still just a portion of my personality. This is another one of the things that I sketched out before I built it. In fact, I built it twice. This device here was um, a way to duplicate or represent the flow of electrons in the Earth from its core out to the outer edge. This being the core here, and I wrapped the wires so that they came down and out and in and up, and they were forming like triangular coils around as you went around like this. And this is the one that distorted the view around and things like that. In essence, this is the basis for an anti-gravity coil. Um, what I succeeded in doing in my lab in Dallas when I first built this was I hooked it up to a pulse generator, amplified, and I put the current through this pulse DC at a varying frequencies as I dialed through them. And all of a sudden, I got this weird feeling, and I looked across the workbench there, and the wall and the door there. They all bent toward me, and it it was a nauseating feeling. So I rolled into the scene. It just bent the light of everything toward the coil. Anyway, it stopped all of a sudden, and the coil had burned out and it wouldn't work again. But it did show me that it was influencing the physics of the room, or my brain, one of the two. I'm not sure, but anyway, this is the basis of the first, my first experiments into rods and coils and anti-gravity. Now, this is from one of my papers that I published on a new way to look at the flow of electricity. Rather a practical way to look at it. Now, when I was there in my lab in Dallas, I hung this wire up in the ceiling in 4 points, north that way and south and east and west. And the red is the actual wire as it's moved when I hook it up to this battery, just a direct current, right? Now, watch what happens. Depending upon which polarity I use, plus or minus on the battery going through the wire, it twists the wire out like this, from the tape in the ceiling. And I thought, well, this is pretty weird. Why is it doing that? And that led me to discussions on the torque in a two-directional transfer of energy in a single DC wire. These were all important things to making the first thing I did on, an anti-gravity type coil. Interesting stuff. You can do this experiment yourself, and you'll see that depending on which way it goes, the loops twist out or the loops twist in, depending upon the twist of the wire, the way it was hung like that. Fascinating thing. Okay, now. Now, after I'd hung that loop up on the ceiling and saw all that, I strung a straight wire across the lab and down to a battery here, which you can just barely see down here. And I hooked up the battery to see the wire twist and how it did it. And just have a look at this. As it says up there, that's the power off. Initial flow, return building, full flow both directions, power off. Just do it again. And that's just one direction here that I chose. If you reverse the polarity, it'll do it in the other direction off to the left here. Now, I did another experiment with a laser and a little piece of aluminum foil here that is reflecting the laser beam onto the wall. And I wanted to see if the twist of the wire was different in the northern and southern hemisphere. So I would hook up plus, minus, minus, plus, and you can see as the wire twisted, it would move this spot on the wall. Let's see if we can do that here now. Okay, reverse the wires. It comes back the other way. We did a planetary-wide test with a bunch of volunteers hanging wires like this in the southern hemisphere and the northern hemisphere to see, how it worked. Fascinating subject, something you can do yourself. You and a group of friends, I guess, in the southern hemisphere. Now, from that experiment, I then went on to do some other tests with twin coils like this, toroidal versus a vertical iron rod coil, both having the same length of copper wire, same diameter and everything. And I put it all together like this. And then I put a bunch of them, around to test the effect on the gravitational field. And what you're looking at here is the basis for what would become a 50-foot diameter um, electrogravitic craft with its own gravitic field created by interacting magnetic fields. Now, after I uh, did those experiments, I also started looking at how gravity would work as a function of fluid motions, fluid dynamics in the fluid of space, ether space, if you will. And so I used a Coke bottle and two speakers aimed at the floor, which of the table actually, which made it vibrate, so that I could run through various frequencies and see what happened inside the Coke bottle on the surface there to simulate gravity or as a function of inertia and spin in a fluid of space. Let's have a look at it here. As you can see, um, this water drop formed like a raindrop, on the sidewalk when it's raining. It's a very unusual thing because it has a dent in it, just like Einstein's predicted for general relativity for the field effect of gravity. And that's me here in the lower left with my camera staring at a Coke bottle, vibrating it. Now we'll just let it go on a bit here. Now it went on like this. I could have left it for 2 hours if I wanted to. The vibration in the surface here sustained after creating this sphere and its influence. It sustained it, without changing. You'll notice that this dent in the surface of the Coke is a field effect. It's because there's motion in that sphere, which makes it, and at that frequency, it makes it bounce up above and float on the surface of the Coke. Let's just move along here. Here you can see some of my, the other stuff. A speaker I had down here, some other junk later on the table, but you get the general picture. Now, then this is how I create that little sphere, running through random frequencies, really stirring up the Coke bottle surface, and all of a sudden, out will come one or two balls. This one here, for instance, and these two, which is interesting. These two are hugging together because the direction of their spin is opposite, so that is the same, so they complement each other. This little guy over here, on the other hand, is spinning like top down rather than down up. These two, which are hugging together. Watch what happens when the two meet. And we get it here somewhere. All right, we create them. They'll bounce off each other is what it amounts to. Okay, we've got two now. Watch, see how it bounces off? It's the opposite spin, either up, down, or down, up. Fascinating thing, isn't it? Fascinating thing. In the fluid of space, the ether of space, if you wish. Notice how the more dense matter gravitates to the center of the vortex tip. This is the first of several lessons in the true nature of gravity. It is not a one-directional force. It is an illusion caused by the standing waves surrounding a vortex in the fluid of space. These inertial waves spin outward from the center of the vortex and then reflect inward toward the center of the vortex. The divergent waves meet with the convergent waves to form neutral shells or orbits. When a mass is placed into these waves, it will reside in the middle of one of these shells or standing waves. On Earth, a rock dropped from the surface into a deep tunnel towards the core will only fall until it reaches the neutral shell, and then it will stop there. Gravity is only observed in the neutral shell from above or below the shell. You can see more about these things on my website. It is interesting. There was an experiment done, or in fact, several, with a 2 mile deep well that was dug, or a tunnel actually vertically into the earth. And the guys that were doing it, they dropped steel ball bearings from the top of that long deep well all the way to the bottom to measure, the effects of gravity on that falling steel ball. Well, they dropped it, and down at the bottom where they had instruments and people watching it, the ball didn't arrive down at the bottom of the hole. So they dropped another and another, and they didn't reach the bottom of the hole. And what they found out when they went examining up the tunnel was that the balls that they had dropped fell down and then fell down toward the east and embedded in the wall of the tunnel, so that the force of gravity bent them. It had a spin moment to it over to the side, like it didn't go straight. Gravity curved to the east like that. And this was, another clue to me that we didn't have the understanding of gravity correct. And you can probably find that on the internet by looking up steel ball bearings, steel ball bearings drop down a well 2 miles deep, and the findings from it, something like that. Okay, now this is an animation that I made showing the waves from a spinning fluid which forms the gravity of Earth. Now, the green one is the net result of the diverging waves hitting the converging waves and forming a neutral pattern here. And where all these wave peaks are here is a stable orbit which will trap an object in it and let it orbit the sun, or any gravitational mass like that. Now just watch what happens here and you'll see it move. So it's the sum of the divergent and the convergent waves form the green, which is the resulting thing. Let's look at it again. I'll just pause it. And you can see how this one here added to that one there forms this neutral one here at this distance. That's at one distance, that's at another, and this is the net result. You can see that there. Let's just move it on a bit like this. Okay. And when this convergent waves are doing this, there's no peak here. It forms basically what is happening, the divergent thing. You see that pattern there. And let's just look at that again. Bang. Now we have a net of these. You can see, watch the green one. The green one's where, everything happens. That's what generates the stable orbits around the sun. Planets orbit the sun. Mass objects orbit the sun in these stable, null zones formed by the divergent and convergent waves coming back. I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to make it work anyway for you. Now, I've gotten a few requests for the formulas that I use to generate these images here. And let's just zoom in. It's a poor resolution on this photograph, but you can see M being, the mass slider here. I forget the name of the program, but anyway, this is the plot of these two sums, which generate these ripple forms coming out from the center. Variables A and B, and the slider values for M. Oh, I was telling you wrong. Looking at this, the divergence, the red for sure, the convergence, the green, and the net result is up at the top. Wow. Go back and look at the video again and see it from that perspective. Sorry about that, folks. Old age. In addition to these things, I also worked with Tesla coils, building, several large ones. This was for the SciTech Center in Perth when I was down there, obviously. And it's a photographic illusion. You think I'm holding this while all this is going on, and making the fluorescent tube light. But to actually photograph this safely, I had uh, a light placed down here to shine up into the tube to show it lighting rather than letting the arcs come out into the air, the invisible ones actually, and ionize the air. The precaution was taken from the insurance company to be sure I didn't get killed showing this. But anyway, this is a thing I built for that. Now then, in 1983, John Schuessler, who was the space flight operations director for the space shuttle at the time of McDonnell Douglas, came down to do a joint tour between West Australia and Victoria and Sydney and Queensland, 4-state tour explaining the the cover up of various things that NASA knew about. Of course, he was privy to it, being the operations director. And this was us here in the newspaper in 1983. Yeah. Anyway, that's enough of that one. Now, during the time in Australia, I also started researching, the Ark of the Covenant and various other things, and which prompted a newspaper article by the West Australian Big Weekend. Let's see if I can see a date here. I don't see the date. You might see it, but I don't. Here it is. Too small to see in this one here, but anyway, that was in 1977, as I recall. And it talks about me and Vendell Jones, the real Indiana Jones, on whom the whole series actually was based on by a guy that used to dig in one of the caves that Indy was exploring. And he and I teamed up to find, not only the lost Ark of the Covenant, but the Copper Scrolls and the treasures of that. It was quite an interesting time, actually. Quite an interesting time. All right, a while ago I was showing you how that single coil and rod thing I was playing with looked. This is what the inside of the developed anti-gravity craft that was being used on the planet at that time. This was this area here, or this width was about 52 feet here, and we had that what was on the rod is sharing the same inductor core, hollow inductor core, and then we had this partial toroidal coil. Both of them were connected together, and pulse DC were put into them. There were other coils for navigational purposes, flat coils that were like this and bent over, and they were in opposite sides of this flat coil, bent over here and one over here, and their polarity was opposite. If this was plus minus, then this would be minus plus, and it was a way to bend the field and navigate things as well. As you might have guessed, I spend a lot of time in various ways researching high voltage physics and the phenomenon associated with high voltage DC. Now, this here is a picture of an experiment I did down in Australia later, where I had a Van de Graaff generator, about a 250,000 volt generator, a copper cone on top of it, some clay or plasticine to affix a steel ball bearing. It's probably about an inch in diameter here. And up here above all this is a paper cylinder rotating with little arcs appearing on the bottom and the top of it. Now, I'll just see if we can get in there quicker. Okay, there's a corona discharge here, and this tube floated in the air above this and rotated, spun. And so I had designed it to do that because I thought that the charges coming off of here would come up and form an up and a return. In the air, the inertia would be like that. So I designed this hollow tube of paper about the diameter of a lead pencil, and I made it so that it would just be in the circular field in the center, and not the return field. And so, because of that, it was balanced between the upward thrust here and the downward thrust as it returned back. There's always two directions in an energy exchange, in and reflected back. And so this was where it was locked in the center, and the return thing went this way. So you're actually seeing a curling vortex like this supporting this paper in the air. It'd be an interesting experiment to do if you're, in schools and things like that, and want to find something interesting for the kids to play with. I've been experimented with, you know, uh, putting a bend in the one end of the tube to make it like a flap to see if it would cause it to rotate differently. And I painted or put lead graphite patterns, spiral patterns on the outside of it for another experiment. Anyway, it would be good to experiment with that and for students to then start to understand more about uh, the physics of high voltage exchanges like this, which do lead also to gravitational discussions. Okay, now talking about this, I thought I would share a circuit that we designed to copy what Henry Moray did in his atmospheric energy collector. He had an antenna about 85 feet long, insulated, and he tapped it at about third of the way, fourth of the way from one pole, one side of the antenna down to ground or down to him where he's taking the charge off with this antenna, and he set up a resonant frequency on that antenna so that it became a tuned circuit that was, gaining energy from the atmosphere, actually from vibrations in the atmosphere caused by the impact of the solar wind. That's why it was stronger during the day than the nighttime, because he wasn't getting a direct hit on that side of the sun, that side of the planet facing the sun. Anyway, let's have a look at this here and get that there. There's the circuit. Here it comes. Okay. So we had a bifiller antenna. You know what a bifiller is. You can figure that out or look it up. It's just parallel leads coming back like this and forming the antenna, 87 feet here. And it went through diodes, which allowed us to take energy from that tuned antenna, but not all of it. It would only take part of it so that we don't lose the resonant field up here. And here you can see using 5 kV 2 amp diodes, and or you could use a zinc sulfide crystal, which is what Moray used. People that are into Moray and Tesla will understand what I'm talking about. And then this came down into a a device here, which is a Wimshurst generator, and we could start the reaction up here by cranking this up, and it would go one way up into the antenna, and we would shock the antenna into resonance, auto resonance. Once it started, well, we could we didn't have to turn this thing anymore to kickstart it, and we would adjust the arc length here by turning this screw back and forth, and we had a gas discharge tube here to tell us in between ground and this when we were getting juice in, and through these 2 points here, you could then take off to a load and convert the frequency and the voltage into a device out here, gaining energy constantly from that antenna. I'll just make that a little bit bigger there so you can see. Once it's started, you don't need this anyway, but I probably could put a switch in here to disconnect it once it's started, because we want the main reaction or main activity to be here. Okay, that's that one. Okay, this video here. Sorry about that. There's a technical glitch. Okay, I'm sorry about the glitches, putting that in there, all that other opening stuff. I don't know, sometimes this program gets a mind of its own. Here is an animation I did showing the formation of a gravitational object where we have a spin and divergent, convergent waves. Now let's just see how this happens here. Things cool, and stable rings are formed, and we have a planet with these stable rings out here. I'll just run that back and forth. Beginning of a hot source there spinning in one of the stable orbits around a star. And we get to this, and this is our final product. Okay, now this is what basic test was done by a navigator on a SAC bomber. His pilot actually uh, gave me a copy of what this guy sent into the patent office because it floated off the floor about 4 or 5 feet after it got the field established. This is a very crude way to generate a test for anti-gravity using a pulse DC into this circuit. The circuit itself becomes the ground of storing energy. We'll just show you how it looks here. The birthday cake model. One more time. Okay. And that's that. Now, playing with all this anti-gravity stuff reminded me of the discussion I have made many times about how Satan is going to come to this planet, or is here with his minions, and he's going to come posing as an angel of light, someone to help the United States, the world, into handling the planet and stopping war and getting rid of nuclear weapons and that kind of stuff. It would be a great deception, and that time is coming soon. So um, I made this animation to show the arrival of Satan and his minions and their flying saucer technology, posing as our elder brothers. Sorry, we've had all the glitches today. I've been trying to be able to show you all these animations and pictures along my research and share it with you because I think it's important that you know that we have this technology and that the technology is what we've got on top of what Satan has brought, and their technology is much higher than ours. Their science is much more advanced than ours. We're catching up, and I'm just one of a few that have figured it out on our own. And it's it's a marvel to me that I'm still alive here for some strange reason. I've been protected for some time, and I don't know whether you would call it the deep state or who was doing it, but I was exiled in Australia for 30 years. After I left the project, and I couldn't come home. I couldn't get a green card to come visit my parents who were elderly and ill at the time. And Holly and I tried to, get the green card to get the State Department to release me, and it was frustrating to both of us because we wanted to come back here and see them. But as as fate would have it, I remembered something. I got a message passed to me during Clinton's administration when he was here with Jim Schlesinger, Secretary of Defense at the time. They were in, when I say here, he was in Australia there on the East Coast while I was on the West Coast. And he passed a message to me through a civilian that he and the White House and others, in Clinton's cabinet, had copies of my book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, which you can get on our website, standeyo.com, and that they wanted to tell me that they knew that my description of what was happening, why they were doing this, was correct, and that people who want to know about the truth behind the UFO situation and why it's being held back, read The Cosmic Conspiracy. And so I got a plug from this guy, which was quite interesting. Let's see if I can find his picture here. Now, when I was still in Australia, this was in 2000. As I say, I'd been trying to get the State Department to let me come back, and I remembered his message passed to me, by that lady there in Australia. And so I rang his office. He was now with Lehman Brothers, and I said, "Can I speak to him?" She said, "Oh, he's at lunch. Can you leave a message?" And I did. I said, "Tell Jim that Stan Deyo needs a favor," and that's all I told her, and hung up. The next day, I got a call from the American consulate in Melbourne. They said, "Oh, Mr. Deyo, there's been a mistake made. We didn't really take your nationality or your passport. You're still a U.S. citizen, and we're going to give you a passport to come home see your parents. Any children you've had there while you're in Australia, we'll make them all American citizens. Give them passports as well." And I was stunned by this information. I knew that Jim had connections, but boy, that was quick. And so that means somebody's been monitoring my existence all this time. And he did a favorable thing in the end. But as I got on the plane there in Australia to fly back here, I was wondering whether the plane was going to blow up, before I got home. But it turns out it didn't, and I've been left alone here, not hassled by any government agency or anything else, or any, clandestine organization, as far as I know. But I owed this man a great deal to let me see my parents before they passed. Jim Schlesinger, Secretary of Defense. All right, I'm going to show you a picture of my last printing of the Cosmic Conspiracy. And we'll just get that here. Let me bring in the file. There we go. And all right, now this book, The Cosmic Conspiracy, has sold over, gosh, probably 280, maybe 290,000 copies since I printed it. And I distributed it in probably in over 22 countries now. And this book is President Reagan's wife bought a new copy of it. King Charles and his dad had a copy of it, the Duke of Edinburgh. And the uh, Clinton administration had it, what Secretary Schlesinger said, the cabinet had copies of it. So, three different administrations that had a considerable amount of power, and in the public eye anyway, had this copy of this book, and they all endorsed this, saying, "Yeah, this is the plan." And so you got to get that copy of the book. I've only got probably 100 copies left now. I haven't reprinted in a while, but you can see that on my website. Uh, I'll just get that for you here. All right, this is my website, standale.com, obviously, as it says here. Um, and if you get onto this, there are a couple of interesting things. First of all, podcasts on the Truth Be Told network that I do every week. So those show up on Rumble and YouTube eventually when I put them up. Here are all of our books and things that would be of interest to you. Um, let's see here. Cosmic Conspiracy. If you click on that, it will take you to this page here. It talks about the book and how you can order it and that kind of stuff. Okay, and we'll close that off here. Holly's book, Dare to Prepare, is essential reading now in the time we're approaching, where civilization will start to collapse into a heap and then be reformed into a global order of some sort. Okay, and Holly's done this one here, which is on prudent places to live in America, based on all these kind of things, natural disasters and all that kind of stuff. It's quite an interesting, CD-ROM. Anyway, yeah, important actually if you're going to try to figure out where to live to get away from various disasters that may come with war. And this is her latest book actually, and it's really interesting reading where it talks about the various wars and the signs of them over in the Middle East. As you can see here, all these things, these are prophecies that are being recognized now. And you need to see that in time events reveal the prophetic perils. Okay, let's see here. What have we got now? We've done that. Okay, there's that book on electricity that I have. That's quite an interesting book for you to get and read. All kinds of neat things about how electricity works in a wire and a conductor of any kind. I really liked writing this. It helps explain tornadoes. It's a lead into gravitic propulsion, all kinds of things in this book. It's a PDF you can download. You don't have to get it otherwise. And I did write the Vindicator Scrolls originally to try to find the Garden of Eden. And so I reproduced an electronic version of a PDF scan. Um, it's out of print now. It was so expensive to print all in color like this. And I had suspects for the Antichrist at that time. Interesting book and worth your download. Let's see here. And of course, those who are wanting information on Townsend Brown, I've got lab notes, um, you know, discussions on Tesla and Townsend Brown's work, the Bonson Laboratory here in France when he was working on it, this high speed one, all kinds of things in this one here. Interesting. Go have a look at it at, where is it, standeo-cart.com. And you can select from that on the side here, you know, what books to look at, like that. Okay, that's enough of that. We'll close that down, and I'll get back to you here in just a second. Now, when I got back to the States in 2001, we bought a house, Holly and I, and set up a laboratory out in a four-car garage that I turned into a lab. And I needed to make a business, and so in addition to publishing business, I set up research to develop an atmospheric or a water version of an anti-gravity craft, but without using anti-gravity, but using what's called asymmetric propulsion, meaning if you want an object to go forward, you shoot air or water ahead of it in a high-speed beam that bends around the craft and comes in the back. And in essence, it lets you breaststroke through the medium that you're in. You do that with an anti-gravity craft, but you can also do it with anything that presses water out the front, of your boat or your submarine, your torpedo, or your UAV. Um, and I I base my research here on a number of things, but in particular, let me just share a few photos here and show you what that is. I got data here from 1890. The British Army, excuse me, had designed an artillery shell that looked like this, and it would take air in the center here as it got shot out of the cannon, and it would go through these side panels out and out the edge here and back around. So the air, as it moved through the air, it would come in and out around, forming this pressure wave behind it, stabilizing it and making it go much further than normal. So based on that, I started figuring out how to make my own versions where the water would be pumped into this device here, which would shoot thin stream of water out like this. It would curve this way and curve this way and circulate here and form a donut of spinning air. And I would collect some of that air here into the intakes to save energy on it. It looks like this in a cutaway. Okay. I did play with what I call the slice driver to see how the water flowed down in and out these curves and formed a suction inside where the curl forms. And built this here, put it for underwater. And this is my foam model for building the shark boat here, which became this new one here, which was a different way to do the recirculation. But in the shark boat, we shot water out, and this worked, shot water out and back into the intakes like this. But we had to govern the intake because it would choke it to death. As it started to move, you'd have the movement of the boat plus your prime mover, and they would cause the boat to stall at a certain speed because of the pressure of the returning wave coming in against the prop. Yeah. Okay. Let's just Now, I ended up making two research divisions, one for air type craft and one for water type craft, using the entrainment or vertical insertion acceleration, the via drive. And I'll just show you this one here, which is one of my folders with some of the images in it here. And we'll have a look at that and go like that. Now, as you can see here, I had different ideas about how to entrain the air, but basically everything was a matter of pushing air out ahead and recirculating to form a pressure wave behind and a negative pressure leading the craft. So you were sucked into a hole into the air. And these are just the various uh, devices that I tested. I built and tested. Each one of the models I built, it took between 90 to 100 hours to build it before we could even start testing. I think you might find some of these things of interest. At some later date, maybe I'll publish a collection of these photos if people are interested in seeing it themselves. You can let me know by email if you're interested in seeing, hard copy or email copies of these different devices and shapes. As you can see, I was busy just doing the air model versions. Okay. All right. Okay, here are some renderings of the various water models that I made of the via drive concept. Um, as you can see, these here are to shoot water up and out and around and recirculate like this to form a donut, a circulating donut around the head of these things. This one here was a nice one. Let's see. Yeah. Okay, I can't quite do that just yet. Here are a number of others, shorter ones. Uh, yeah. You can see I was busy all this time when people didn't know that I was doing this. People were wondering why I was so quiet and hadn't done things, but it's because I've been working on a number of these other issues. Here was our first one that we tested underwater on a boat, and you can see that there. It made a nice ringing sound in the water underneath, kind of a metallic sound. You can see here again the concept: water comes out and around and flows through the head like that. There's a more detailed uh, discussion of it there. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to switch over to Photoshop. Let me pause this. Okay. Well, we're running short of time tonight, so I'm going to run through a few of them here in Photoshop, just in rapid succession. Okay, this is a submarine propulsion. It could also be torpedo propulsion. Shooting it out the front, curling it around back like this. I built this one and tested it, and this was the first one we built of the original one that I showed you a while ago. You can see the donut forming here around the exit point, and this is a concept of how the Via Marine thing works. You can study this at your leisure later. This is from 2001, I think it was. Have a look at that. Okay, and then we're going to go to this pod 2. It's a cutaway of how it would look inside. And then this one, as it's all assembled. And pod 7, a different method of doing it all, which is less drag on the components, but interesting. This was the original head for my shark boat. And you can see here how it circulated through, and found out that as it moved, the movement through the water added extra speed to this, which would slow down the impeller or propeller by putting back thrust on it. So we had to figure out a way to compensate for that. Another one of those little tricky things. These are several versions for the water all at once. That one was the first ever one made for underwater. And Here are some other ideas that I had on the subject. And here, yeah, as I say, you can look at these by pausing it later. Here's a variety of air and marine mixed together. Okay. Well, again, I apologize for some of the technical glitches here, trying to show you these images and talk about them. And this program is difficult sometimes to let it do what you want it to do or get it to do it. Okay, that's the majority of the things I was going to hit on today. Just showing you some of the stuff that make me what I am today. Uh, I am, as it says on my website under the About Stan Deyo portion down at the bottom in my bio, I am an autodidact polymath. You can look that up. And you know, I am truly one of those. I have an IQ over, I think it's around 186. So it explains a lot of the things that I do that might surprise you. I study many disciplines on my own by the grace of the good Lord. And all my work that I do here is for helping humanity, but also helping humanity realize that we live in a virtual reality created by our God, our Creator, and that we will leave this life and go into the upper level of existence, the third heaven, as the Bible calls it, at some point in time, either to be judged for our bad actions or our good actions, or to be saved by the blood of the Messiah, Yeshua. And I pray that you all investigate Yeshua and the writings about him and his sacrifice for us here on the planet, and that you are eventually brought into his fold as part of the what the Bible calls the bride, where the bride is going to be taken to safety soon. Thank you for listening and putting up with my ramblings. All right. Goodbye.